From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
We are hopeful. We are determined. Playing with General Dostum is playing with a million human beings.
General Abdul Rashid Dostum, one of Afghanistan's most feared warlords, returns from exile just days before Afghanistan's presidential election to support President Karzai. Dostum used to be on the CIA payroll and worked closely with U.S. Special Forces. In 2001, he oversaw a massacre that left at least 2,000 Taliban POWs dead. We'll speak with international human rights lawyer Andy McEntee. Then, the debate over health care reform is being closely watched around the world. Today, we'll look at Britain and Canada. We'll speak with former British MP Tony Benn about the British healthcare system. Then, we go to Toronto.
They spend 9% of their gross national product on health care, and 34 million of their people have no health care coverage. And in Canada, we spend 7% of our gross national product, and every man, woman, and child in Canada is covered under Medicare.
That's the late Tommy Douglas, the Premier of Saskatchewan, who ushered in Canada's single-payer system. Named by the CBC as the greatest Canadian, he also happens to be actor Kiefer Sutherland's grandfather. We'll speak with a Canadian doctor who diagnoses U.S. healthcare. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The U.S. Supreme Court has taken the rare step of ordering a federal court to conduct a new hearing for Georgia death row prisoner Troy Anthony Davis. The High Court ordered the new hearing to determine whether evidence that could not have been obtained at the time of trial clearly establishes Davis's innocence. Since Davis was convicted for the 1989 killing of a white police officer, 7 of the 9 non-police witnesses have recanted their testimony. There's no direct physical evidence tying Davis to the crime scene. Troy Davis's sister, Martina Correa, recently appeared on Democracy Now!
These people were easily manipulated. They built this case around Troy with no physical evidence, no DNA. And what they did is they ran on the excitement and the adrenaline that we have to get somebody for this police officer's murder. We have to appease the community. And, you know, it got to the point where they were attacking so many black men that it's like any black man will do. And when Sylvester Coles came and pointed at Troy, everything dropped and they just built a case around Troy.
In the majority opinion in the Troy Davis case, Justice John Paul Stevens wrote, quote, "The substantial risk of putting an innocent man to death clearly provides an adequate justification for holding an evidentiary hearing." Supreme Court Justices Antonin Scalia and Clarence Thomas objected to the court's decision. Scalia criticized his colleagues for thinking that mere innocence is grounds to overturn a conviction. Scalia wrote, quote, "This court has never held that the Constitution forbids the execution of a convicted defendant who has had a full and fair trial, but is later able to convince a habeas court that he's actually innocent." We'll have more on Troy Davis's case on Wednesday. Visit democracynow.org for our full ongoing coverage of this story. In Afghanistan, a mortar has hit the presidential palace in Kabul, while another rocket struck the police headquarters in the Afghan capital. In a third attack, 7 people were killed and 52 wounded by a suicide car bomber who rammed his car into a convoy of Western troops in Kabul. The dead included 2 Afghan employees of the United Nations. The Taliban claim responsibility for the attacks that come just 2 days before the nation's presidential election. On Monday, President Barack Obama defended his escalation of the war in Afghanistan, saying it's, quote, "a war worth fighting." Obama spoke at the Veterans of Foreign Wars National Convention in Phoenix.
As I said when I announced this strategy, there will be more difficult days ahead. The insurgency in Afghanistan didn't just happen overnight, and we won't defeat it overnight. This will not be quick nor easy. But we must never forget, this is not a war of choice. This is a war of necessity. Those who attacked America on 9/11 are plotting to do so again. If left unchecked, the Taliban insurgency will mean an even larger safe haven from which al-Qaeda would plot to kill more Americans. So this is not only a war worth fighting, this is fundamental to the defense of our people.
The news website Global Post is reporting one of the richest sources of Taliban funding has become foreign assistance coming into the country. Virtually every major reconstruction project includes a healthy cut for the insurgents in the form of protection money or extortion. International donors, primarily the United States, are to a large extent financing their own enemy. The manager of one of Afghan firms with lucrative construction contracts with U.S. government builds in a minimum of 20% for the Taliban in his cost estimates. The manager, who would not speak openly, has told friends privately that he makes in the neighborhood of $1 million per month. Out of this, $200,000 is siphoned off for the insurgents. If the money's not paid out, road workers may be attacked or killed, bridges may be blown up, engineers may be assassinated. In news from this country, gun control advocates have expressed concern over the growing number of armed protesters attending town hall meetings and speeches by President Obama. On Monday, police in Phoenix reported at least a dozen protesters were carrying arms near a convention hall where President Obama spoke. At least one man had an AR-15 semi-automatic assault rifle slung over his shoulder. Police made no arrests, citing a state law that allows people to carry unconcealed guns. On August 11th, police arrested a man for having a loaded, unlicensed gun in his car near a New Hampshire school where Obama later held a health care forum. In a separate incident, another man outside that same event displayed a gun in a holster on his leg. Protesters also brought guns to recent town hall meetings on health care in Tennessee and Arizona. On Monday, Republican Congressmember Phil Gingrey appeared on Hardball with Chris Matthews and defended the right of protesters to be armed.
Well, Chris, they may have every right to do that. These may be off-duty police officers. They could, you don't know, but if they've got a permit to carry, then absolutely they can show that and prove that they have the right.
But why would you bring a gun to where the president was speaking? Why would you bring a gun? Anybody? I know it's a right, but why would you do it? Under what conditions would you choose to use it? I've never seen this in my life before. People coming armed to public debates about health care.
Chris, it just so happens these very people would take that same weapon anywhere they go, anywhere they're permitted to carry a concealed weapon. They have the right to do that. I agree with Jim. The rights under the Second Amendment.
In healthcare news, several Democratic lawmakers have expressed alarm over proposals to abandon plans to create a government-run insurance option. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and others defended the public insurance plan, saying it's essential to keep the private health insurance companies honest. Democratic Congressmember Jen Schakowsky of Illinois said she saw no credible alternative to a public option. She said, quote, the insurance industry would be absolutely giddy to have a mandate that everybody have health insurance without any real competition. Meanwhile, many questions remain unanswered about the proposed creation of health care cooperatives instead of the government-run insurance option. In 2000, a report by the U.S. General Accounting Office found that the potential for cooperatives to reduce overall health insurance premiums is limited in part because they lack sufficient leverage as a result of their limited market share. The Obama administration filed court papers Monday claiming the 1996 Defense of Marriage Act discriminates against gay men and lesbians. But in a move that's angered gay rights activists, the Justice Department urged dismissal of a lawsuit challenging the act, noting it remains law until Congress repeals it. Opponents of same-sex marriage accused the White House of insincerity in its defense of the act, and supporters demanded a more proactive approach to ensuring that all citizens enjoy equal protection under the law. A delegation from the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights has arrived in Honduras to monitor the situation more than a month after the democratically elected President Manuel Zelaya was ousted in a coup. The commission met with local Honduran human rights groups but refused to meet with the interim government. Luz Patricia Mejia is the head of the Inter-American Human Rights Commission.
The Commission will not meet with Micheletti because the Commission has reiterated that it does not recognize Mr. Micheletti as the President. We recognize President Manuel Zelaya as the constitutional President, and because of this we will not have any meetings.
Luz Patricia Mejia also said the Commission has received reports of human rights abuses committed by the coup government.
Since the coup, the Inter-American Commission has received an important number of complaints and violations of human rights. They come from representatives of the union, social leaders, human rights campaigners, from the feminist movement, and many complaints concern the impossibility of carrying out their functions in a free way.
In economic news, the new head of the bailed-out insurance giant AIG will earn at least $7 million a year, even though AIG is essentially now a taxpayer-owned entity. Robert Bernmash will earn 17 times more than President Barack Obama's $400,000 salary.